technology advances, burning bridges to the past and pushing old tech into oblivion. Every important piece of equipment has been replaced or superseded. They will gather dust until they become dust themselves. No one needs old tech. It is obsolete. Can't you see? What about creativity then? The flaws of the past always had pushed people into corners where creativity thrives. Working around limitations brings out the best in us. Why settle for the most advanced hardware when the law of diminishing returns clearly shows that nobody ever needs the most modern and expensive tech? There is a path between flawed and perfect we call character. Like your dad's car you rode in as you were little, minor flaws become character and render events more memorable, more authentic. Vintage gear matters. Take this lens for example, a Canon prime lens with a focal length of approximately 50mm, leaning closer to 45. It will happily do an aperture of f1.4 when shot wide open, producing a bokeh that looks different to today's lenses. The corners are soft, which gives the resulting image a kind of warmth. When it comes down to the price, it is beyond value for money. A measly $25, a real steal. I could shoot a whole film with this one lens. The images this lens creates are very sharp in the center, with a fall-off towards the edges. It is surprisingly resistant to flares or ghosting compared to other lenses from that time. Take this with a grain of salt though. There is still a good amount compared to the newest lenses, but it is far from distracting or degrading. As a number of other great equipment, it was fabricated in Japan in July 1981, according to its serial number. The bokeh is pretty, somewhere between swirly and modern. It is still a mystery to me how they packed this big of a punch into a small and lightweight lens like this. Clinging to junk from yesteryear, adding shackles to your feet while racing to create better imagery and videography seems pointless. If these ancient artifacts would be as great as you think, no one would ever consider developing new cameras and lenses. Everyone would use vintage gear. What worth is a lens to you costing 20 times as much despite only being better by a small fraction? Even though some equipment is worse by a bigger margin, it will push you into thinking about some design choices in your photography, which will definitely lead to a better understanding of the trade. Enter this gem. This Vivitar wide-angle lens has a very soft image but looks natural, even nostalgic because of that. The throw on the focus ring is immense, one might even say precise, as is it on the zoom ring, which allows for very fine adjustments. After decades, this lens feels smooth to operate and creates unique scenes that manage to pull me in. Its focal length range from 17 to 28mm yields a very appreciated field of view for big open scenes. If you wonder about the cost, it is probably cheaper than your average dinner menu at your local restaurant. As far as my research goes, this lens's origin is quite difficult to determine. It was either produced in 1980 or 1990, definitely in a year ending with 0. Further, it was most likely manufactured in South Korea by the Samyang Optics Company Limited. Despite Vivitar not being known as a high-end lens designer, my copy is very good with a few quirks nevertheless. The focal plane moves while zooming, making it practically impossible to change the focal length while filming without a designated focus puller. Shot at 17mm, it is very soft at the edges and seems to suffer from a tiny bit of vignetting. Despite all that, the final images looked amazing. Camera lens mounts have evolved, adding a perceived hurdle to forgotten gear. All is not lost though. Modern mirrorless cameras have a shorter flange distance, which allows for easy adapting. In other words, nothing a bit of 3D printing can't fix. Adapting vintage lenses to modern cameras brings out the best in them. The harsh and dense pixels melt into a pleasant image. So many old lenses can be adapted and given another breath of life. The manual nature of most vintage lenses further adds to this approach. Another variable then. Modern gear just is compatible. Preferences will be preferences. And yes, which is absolutely the case in modern big screen filmmaking. Analog film gear, well-established lenses everywhere. Vintage gear is not for everybody though. The 50mm lens arrived damaged. The focus ring could not be moved. Was it damaged from the get-go? Was it damaged during shipping? Answers lost to the void, even though the packaging seems to give some clues. Exactly the same thing happened to my Pentax-A lens from the same era. A plastic thread jumped out of alignment and hindered the spinning of the focus ring. After a few minutes of disassembling, it was back to its former state and worked flawlessly, as did the Canon lens. Be prepared to be challenged by problems with vintage gear. Oftentimes, a successful fix is only a few loose screws away. On the flip side, some pieces sadly will find themselves past their expiration date. Working on a lens like this can be intimidating. Looking back at the cost and comparing it to its possible uses makes it worth and less scary all the while. Knowledge can be acquired online with ease. There might even be a step-by-step guide for exactly the problem you are facing. Being stuck with perfect gear that makes everything look clinically clean but harsh and sterile, or moving into a realm of flaws and possible losses, but finding character and thriving in creativity due to a deeper understanding of the gear, you need to be a real enthusiast to go down the second route. But I can see it being worth a shot in the long run.